like to welcome you to this information session about the U.S. Navy Talent Pipeline Program. I'm Joe Bartow, and I'm the program leader for the U.S. Navy Talent Pipeline Program. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to take about 45 minutes to kind of walk you through the program. Then we're just going to do some general Q&A. We've got some participants in the program here. We appreciate you being here, Strowig. Certainly Fink and Terry, who's here today, is also participants in the program. And part of the reason we're here is because they believe in the program and through their participation, so they'll be a good resource for you. And certainly Fairbanks Morse Defense. So Dave representing Fairbanks Morse, and I don't think Tim had and Daryl and Taylor Powell, who is the flag leader, and Joanne, who is one of the network coaches, been intimate in the program from the very beginning. So they're a good reference and somebody you can chat with about what's going on specifics. Let's talk about the backstory, just so everybody kind of understands how we got here. So the number one most important program across the entire fire American government is the USS Columbia program. It's a big replacement for the Ohio class of submarines. That's a huge part of our nuclear defense. And that the Ohio class, which was started in the 70s, completed in the early 80s, is now reaching its lifestyle. It's the end of its life cycle. So the Navy was starting to think about that back in 2007, 8, and 9. What they did was a assessment of the American manufacturing base to determine if we had the manufacturing base to start this recapitalization of the fleet. So at that time, the last time we recapitalized back in the 70s, somewhere around 35% of the American economy was in manufacturing. Anybody want to take a guess on today? 11, 12% is American manufacturing, so that screams some risk. And then when you looked at specifically the defense industrial base, when we lived through the 90s and, the wall came down and we were never going to have to fight a war again, and sequestration and all those other things that went on, many companies that were in the defense industrial base got out of the defense industrial base. And even many of the companies that were in the defense industrial base, they used to do 80 or 90% of their business. Now we're doing 5 or 10% of their business. So when they did this assessment of the American manufacturing base, what they saw was just a lot of risk. There weren't a lot of companies. A lot of the companies that were in there didn't have the infrastructure. So in 2010, they created the Supplier Development Fund. Supplier Development Fund was focused on, as a congressional set aside, for dollars to go into this fund that could be allocated to the industry. And most of those dollars, for about 10 years, and even to this day, went to infrastructure. So I need a new crane, I need a bigger building, I need another 5X machine. So the typical process was you developed a proposal, you asked for some help, there was an agreement, we bought you a new machine. Well, as the decade continued to move, in 2017, they redid that assessment. And when they redid that assessment, they looked at, again, the capacity after they'd spent a lot of money. What was the number one challenge facing the American manufacturing base? People. We had plenty of buildings, we had all this stuff, we just didn't have anybody there. So that's when Matt Sermon, who was at the time was in the Columbia program, we in my company had been working in this space since 2002 and had been running a program for Newport News Shipbuilding. Started our history at the welding school, went over to talent acquisition and retention, business performance. So some of the work we were doing down in Newport News Shipbuilding, Matt Sermon became aware of, and right in the teeth of COVID, December 2020, they decided that they were going to start a major initiative about the same time that ATDM came on, about how we were going to help American manufacturers with their talent acquisition and retention problems. Well, when I got that call, I was like, you do realize this is COVID. Not a lot of conversations going on at that point in our career. So we met in December of 20, and in January of 21, they selected Philadelphia, Pennsylvania as going to be the place we're going to start. I was like, kind of like Hampton Roads. I live in Hampton Roads. Why don't we just start there? No, we're going to Philly. So interestingly enough, when you look, and I'm sure you've all seen, there's these heat maps of where all the people are in the country that do this work. Where might the highest density of small and medium-sized employers in the defense industrial base be? Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Within 100 miles, like 30% of the defense industrial base. And most of them are small and medium-sized companies. 100-person machine shops, 200-person castings facilities, et cetera, et cetera. So that's where we started. First meeting was on April Fool's Day, 2021, at Philly Shipyard, now owned by Hanwha. It was like 6 feet apart, all masked up. We were trying to do a video input. It was a nightmare. After it was over, I looked at Matt Sermon and I said, hey man, I don't think this is a good idea. And he said, it is a great idea and we're going to do this. So we put our head down. So the history of the program is, this is the first time since World War II that the United States government is investing in employers and providing them a service that has historically been your sole responsibility. So when you looked at Newport News Shipbuilding, they said they're coming to do supplier development. What'd that mean? They were coming to give you a long list of things you were screwing up on, right? That's right. And you need to fix it all. Well, this program is a service to you being provided by the Navy to help you improve your talent acquisition and retention systems. So with that, it's really something that we've never gotten in the middle of because it's hard. And in fact, when we're looking at small and medium-sized companies, it's probably the hardest thing we do. Generally, we're really good at what we do. The talent acquisition and retention piece is not a core competency. So that's where we're at. So any questions on the history? All right, so let's take a ride. So we are starting the 5th year of the program. So so we now are across the entire maritime industrial base. So I always love to show a video of our Navy, because that's what we're a part of. So we'll start with a little motivational video, get our blood pumping a little bit, and we'll go from there. So I open this with a video because we are in a very, very dangerous time in the history of our country today. We're in a naval battle in the Persian Gulf. We're in a shooting war. People don't often know that. But what's so important about this is you, if you're in the defense industrial base, you are part of our national security. And winning matters. So we're here today to build the capacity, to build the ships and the infrastructure that our nation needs to protect our way of life. So me being in the video, my favorite part, anybody see the tank coming off that landing thing? So I'm kind of a fish out of water because I'm a West Point graduate. So I'm hanging out with all these Naval Academy guys. So I have to speak really slowly and in very simple words so that they can understand what my brothers say.
You semaphore flags.
We do. But we have the special bond between the warrior class, the soldier, sailor, airman, marine, and American manufacturing, is that we will never put our soldiers, sailor, airman, marine in a fair fight. What that means is if we're going to put them in harm's way, we're going to make sure they have the very best equipment, the very best training, the very best support. So if we ask them to do that, they win 100-0. And that's that special bond we have that is truly is not there. So Scott Papano, who was the original PEO Strategic Submarines, was here, Admiral. If he was talking here, he would say that you sitting in this room are more important than the soldiers, sailor, airmen, Marines. While they go out and fight the battles, it's the American manufacturing base that's going to win the war. This is serious business for what we're trying to accomplish to recapitalize this fleet. But it is that special bond that makes us important, and that we actually, what prevents war today is not, those guys out there on the pointy end, is they know as they wake the sleeping giant, which we're in the process now, there's nobody that can beat us in the world. And I come from a very special place on that, because I got to lead soldiers in combat during Operation Desert Storm. There's a picture 3 days before we crossed the Burma to Iraq, going after the Iraqi Republican Guards. And that's the only tree in northern Saudi Arabia. But I know what that feels like. I know what it feels like to have the very best of everything. So the mission we got, and we were able to win 98-1, 98-2. But I show that picture too because of those 46 soldiers that were in my unit, 38 of them were under the age of 22 years old. So when you talk today about young people are no good, young people, well, you better thank God that those young people raise their right hand and go fight. So there's something really good there. I would contend that my grandchildren, your children, are 100 times better than we were. So when you start to think about this challenge of talent acquisition and retention, there's always two camps. There's the camp that is, you just can't find good people today. These kids today are terrible. All they want to do is be on their computer, on their cell phones. They want to make $1 million. They want to be the president of the company. And then I wonder why some companies just don't have any trouble at all. Then I also wonder, when you look at the video, that every one of those people that has raised their right hand and joined our military services didn't answer a job requirement. All they did was raise their hand. I want to serve my country. So what's the difference between how the military brings people in and makes them productive and what we might be doing in our companies? So this idea that we get great people and create great companies is not out of the ordinary. And that's really what our journey is here, is not just improve your talent acquisition and retention systems, but help you run a better business. And when you run a better business, you provide more capacity to the Navy that the Navy desperately needs to meet this demand. So if you've been following this, we now are across all the Navy platforms. If you have questions on that, you can talk to my friend Andy Kimsey. So it's much more than just, we started with submarines just because submarines were the #1 program, but it's really an all float model. So anywhere you touch the defense industrial base, you are eligible to be in the program. So it's our mission. I'm an Army guy. Can't get out of bed in the morning without the mission. And it's the first step of the process. We have to be aligned on the mission for you to take advantage of the services. First is, this is not a workforce development program. When you say workforce development in America, you mean investment in training people and then hope you find the job. This is an economic development initiative, which is getting on the employer side of the equation. So if Matt Sermon was here today, he would say we have a very inefficient marketplace. Everybody in America, all of you on the employer side, are looking for good people, right? You have a demand. We have a tremendous number of people that are getting trained and on the workforce development side. So you would say, well, what's the problem? Huge demand, big supply. Well, the challenge is we have a very inefficient marketplace. What we have is the employer side is stuck in what we call a post and hope mentality. They write a job rec, they post it, and then they all sit around and wait for somebody to apply. And most of the time they wait a really long time. And then when they get one, they all get excited, they throw the job rec out, they hire them. On the other side, we're training a tremendous amount of people in America, and then we're throwing them out there hoping they find a job. So the essence of the marketplace is when post and hope meets train and pray, what do you get? What we have today, frustration on both sides. So this program, in the genius of the United States Navy, is about being the translator. What we do is try to make this a more efficient marketplace, but we start with the employer. So this is we start on the demand side of the equation to teach the employers how to recruit, hire, and retain people and take advantage of the other system. So that's the essence of the program in the mission statement. We're all for and about employers because at the end of the day, it is about you. Nobody in America finds a job until an employer offers them a job. The employers are making the decision to hire or not hire. So that is the essence, is focusing on the employer. And then also we know that it's not how many you hire, it's how many you keep. So this program is all about retention. So as you look through, we keep track of the numbers. First year we were in Philly, we only had 36 companies. It was the pilot year. We had 259 starts and a 63% first year retention rate. Second year we added Hampton Roads in Pittsburgh. We went to 124 employers and we had 910 starts with a 69% retention rate. So right now in our current operation, the third cohort is in their retention year, and we're at about 75% on about 4,000 starts. We're in the first year with 451 companies, and then now we're planning for the next year, which is why you're here today, which is we're talking about adding the next cohort for 26, 28, or 25, 27, my fault. And then we're planning for in the future. Right here, right in this time period here in Boston, Massachusetts, Admiral Papano and Matt Sermon made the decision to go to the national rollout. So we're a part in the national rollout now, which is what this program here is about, is what we're doing and how you can participate in that. So when we did that meeting for the national rollout, there are 5 planning assumptions for the strategy that we're doing. Just go over them real quickly. First is the Navy demand is going to go through 2040. That's probably conservative. You can talk to Andy about this. This thing's probably going to go to 2050. We're going to float the first Columbia in 28, hopefully. And then in 32, we're going to build one a year for the next 10 years. We got the whole new fleet of Constellation craft for the frigates. Aircraft carriers are heel to toe. We're building surface ships as fast as we possibly can build them. So we know there is a demand. Second is that the American economy is operating at full employment. We essentially have been at full employment for the last 20 years. So when you're somewhere between 3 and 4% unemployment, what's that mean? Everybody who wants a job can have a job. So we're not in a competitive environment. If we were at a place where we had 20% unemployment in America, it'd be easy. Put it in the paper, 100 people show up. So this is no longer can you post an hope. It's an actual active verb that you got to get into the marketplace and recruit people and come into your company. Third, and this is really an important one, is we are working with small and medium-sized businesses exclusively. So I'm going to define that. We have 3 categories: companies under 50, which currently represent about 40% of the 451. These are companies that don't have an HR person at all. They just need a couple people. They sit around and say, who are we going to go find? They call people they know, right? So they're really good, but a lot of those are family-run businesses. Then we go to 51 to 300. The other 40% are in that category. Those 2 groups, what I call the heartbeat of the American economy. They're the small businesses that are the tier 3, 4, 5 companies that are often part of this critical supplier base that we ignore. And then 300 to 1,000. So we're under 1,000. What that means to you is we don't get involved with the bigs, like Newport News Shipbuilding, like GDEB, because they tend to suck up all the resources. So when the Navy did this program, they focused us on those small and medium-sized companies that are generally ignored in this equation. That's you. So we don't work with the bigs. Next is, we continue to say that the sole responsibility of this is the employer. This program is a teach you how to fish program, not fish for you. If you ever wait for me to send you a resume, you will wait a really long time. So this is about helping you accomplish what you need to get done, not do it for you. Fourth is that now that we're in the 5th year of the program, the model is proven. So we need to retain the integrity of the model as we do the national rollout. And then finally, this program is essentially a program of record. We're in the 4th year. We're funded through GDEB Supplier Development Fund. We're on a 10-year contract. So this is not something that we're always competing for dollars. So because of the success of the program, has created this long-term commitment by the Navy. So here's our spread. We started in Philly. Second year we went to Pittsburgh and Hampton Roads. Third we asked Boston and Long Island. Last year we went to Southern California, and we started the Enterprise Plus flag, which is the national rollout flag. So the Enterprise are large companies like Fairbanks Morse Defense, but have multiple sites. So if the site that is eligible to be in the program is this plant leader, has P&L responsibility, they generate the labor demand, and they're responsible for retention, then they're eligible to be in the program. So while Fairbanks Morse is in the program, really what's in the program is there's 16 sites that are in the program, and Fairbanks Morse is taking the responsibility to train and coach them with our support. So that's part of our expansion strategy. The plus is any company like Strowig in the country that wants our help, we're going to help them. So as we've started this year, we now have started to develop a heat map. So you look at the heat map, obviously where we stand today, there's a lot of dots up in that area. So one of our tasks from the Navy is for the rest of this year and next November, we're going to select where we're going to plant the next flag. So obviously, one of the major criteria for flag selection is where there's a density of employers that want to take advantage of the service. So what we're doing in the spring is we're doing these information sessions across the country to start the process of we are searching for the right flag planting area. And during this next couple months, if we start to get that demand, then that could put Wisconsin in the running to actually be one of the next regional flags. Does that make sense to you? In the past, we had a very sophisticated system. Let's go there. So we got there. So anyway. Also important about the program is we keep score. To be in the program, you've got to provide your data to us. So what we keep is some very top level data to show the performance of the program. First of all, if you're in the program, you've got to get trained. And I'm going to talk to you about the training here in a minute. And then you report your demand. If you're not hiring anybody, you shouldn't be in the program, right? If you don't have a hiring demand. Hiring demand is that you have an intent to hire in the future. And then the actual starts, and then the number retained for the first year. So when you're a member employer, we capture that data, and that's got to be a part of the commitment. Because that's how we prove to the Navy that we're actually getting better. And we get that data, and we parse that in terms of where they came from, et cetera. So part of this is, if you're familiar with the continuous improvement journey, and most of you are, what this is very much a continuous improvement flare. What we've developed here is we've taken what we call the perfect state. And it starts with demand. So in everybody, when you look at your demand in the future, demand is a function of two things. One is replacing people that leave, and two is, based upon your business forecast, you're either adding people or losing people. So the sum of that is how many people you need in the future. Also, it's your entire hiring demand. So your hiring demand is in three categories. First are your professional positions, your salary positions, engineers, quality people. They're a part of the demand. Second is experienced people. Certainly, there is often a demand for somebody with a lot of experience. Third is entry-level talent. Usually the biggest demand is for entry-level talent. Often we think that everybody's got to be experienced. So what we've discovered is that we're our own worst enemy. All of us are looking for an 18-year-old with 20 years of experience, and we want to pay him $10 an hour. It'd be perfect. Unfortunately, that person does not exist. So we just can't keep looking for those unicorns in the process. So what's perfect? Is it possible to recruit an 18-year-old and have them stay in your company for 40 years? Absolutely. So when I got the best job in the world. I get to wander around America and watch Americans build things. It's the coolest thing ever. Whenever I go on a plant tour, I'll ask them, I'll say, tell me about your best person. I did it yesterday. They always know the name. It's Johnny or Sally. So I'll wander over there and say, how's it going? And I'll say, when did you start? I was 18 years old. I didn't know anything. My father told me if I didn't go find a job, he was going to kick me out on the street. And he knew a guy who knew a guy who knew a guy. I ended up here, and then I asked him, who was your guy? And they always know the name. The first person who said, I believe you can be something. And they started to teach them. And then you found out that this guy now is the general manager of the business. They've been there 40 years and they're never going anywhere else. A lot of companies don't believe that's possible anymore. I don't believe that. I believe people want to go to one place and be able to be valued there for their careers. Now, a lot of times it doesn't occur, but it is possible. Second is, and the other big thing is, what's your hiring strategy? We know today, in a very constricted labor market, no longer can you hire for skill and hope for fit. You have got to get the right people on your bus, and then you're going to have to train them. If you can get people with some skills up front, all the better. But this idea of a plug-and-play employee just doesn't exist. Why? All of our businesses are so unique. If it was as easy as you can be a MIG welder, that'd be really easy. But our processes require you to be good at that specific thing inside the business. So no matter where you are or how experienced you get, you still have to train the people to be productive on your team. You can't delegate that. And then we look at, once you generate your demand, you go through the 4 phases of the process. How do I recruit them? What are my pipelines? How do I go find them? Employee referral programs, career and technical education institutions, social media, all those tools to generate candidates. And then how do I get the right people and then train them to be successful and stay with me for a year? So this is what we do in order to educate you on what the possibilities are of what the system looks like, because it is a system. So also, to be involved in the program, you got to meet 10 criteria, and there's a method to the madness here. So the first one is pretty simple. If you don't agree to the mission, don't pass go, don't collect $200. If you think it's the government's responsibility to solve your talent acquisition problem, have at it. You just go to the category. We don't. One thing we're really proud at, and I've been in this business a long time, is when we come together, we don't come together to whine about how hard this is. We come together to figure out how we're going to solve the problem. And that's what the mission is. Second, we already talked about, are you a small or medium-sized business? Third is, do you have a hiring demand in the future? Now, a lot of people say, hell, I don't even know how many people I need tomorrow. Or I know I need 15, I need them like yesterday. What we have to say is we're looking for people who are able to forecast their people into the future so they have a strategic view. Now, you may not know exactly how many you need, but you should have a feel in your business planning process of how many you need to run your business in the future. Excuse me. The thing about this is a strategy. Next is our entry-level new hires part of your talent acquisition strategy. There are some people, God bless you, that say I have to have people with 5 years of experience. I got to have people with 20 years worth of experience. Well, good luck, because those people don't exist, and to get them, it's really hard to find them. It's really hard to keep them. Do you offer full-time employment with benefits? So if you're and I'm not being pejorative here in any sense, if you're a temp to perm company, hire a temp company, bring 50 guys in and hope they work out, probably not a good place. Do you accept responsibility to make sure your new hires are productive and trained to meet your individual job requirements? Regardless of how you do it or what size you are, that is your responsibility to teach the people what they need to do to be successful. Will you get trained in the talent acquisition retention model we just discussed? If we come in and we decide that there's something you need to improve, and we agree that there's a strategy or a plan to move forward, will you actually do something different? This is all rainbows and unicorns until people say, you mean I have to do something? Why, yes, you do. And Taylor, when she talks about that, she talked about that today, is you got to own the problem. It's not going to be just, we have a hard time recruiting people. We got to figure out a resolution. 9 and 10 are really important. 9 is, if you're a part of this program, will you agree to attend events so you can share what you're learning with other people? We do that 3 times a year. And it's amazing when we bring people together and they start sharing their problems that we all are not different. We're all working the same issues. And when we start to share what we're doing, some powerful things happen. And then the last is you got to give us your data. No data, no play. Any questions on the qualifying criteria? Pretty clear. Also, we said there's an enterprise program. I won't go through these in depth. The biggest one is that if you have been successful in any one of the regional flags and you want to become an enterprise employer like Fairbanks Morse, Trident Maritime Systems, DRS, Leonardo, Naval Propulsion Systems, or the National Non-Ferrous Founders Society, we work with you in that special category. Also, if you're a training provider, you have to go through some criteria. You got to support the mission. Do you have skills in the shipbuilding model? Will you actually work with employers to help people find a job? Often not a real skill for CTE programs. And then will you also participate? And then finally, like for new shipbuilding, ACIBC, SIBC, the big primes, the third category is facilitators. So these are organizations that agree with the program and will advocate for the program in their networks of influence. These also include a lot of the local workforce development boards. WPI is an example of this, where your members taking advantage of the service is good for your association, but also good for the organization as well. So what does the Navy pay for? First, what we're doing now, identification, recruiting, and assessment of organizations to come into the program. We do that if you leave today and you want to learn more, then we set up an individual conversation. We go to the program, answer any specific questions. If you want to move to the next step, it's to go through a training program so with your key leaders, they can understand what the basic premises of the program are. If you're a small company, that often is just one or two people. You get to a bigger company, like FMN, we had, 15, 20 people in the room. The lead team, because as we talked about, it's not just HR. Everybody's got to be involved. Once you understand that, then we do a value stream mapping, which is we look at that perfect state, and then we ask you, so how are you doing it today? How do you recruit? How do you hire? How do you onboard? We look at where the opportunities of improvement are. We agree on the things that you're going to do yourselves and the things you want the Navy's help for. We agree to that. We put it in a plan of action milestones. We go to work, and a year later we talk about the product of that, and then we relook at the map, say what are we going to do next. We do a lot of sharing and learning events. As I mentioned, we do a monthly all hands call. That's just a listen only sharing event. And then we do some best practice models with selected companies, then all the program management. If you come in the program, you're going to be assigned to a network. So a network has no more than 20 employers. They have a dedicated coach. So Daryl, Taylor, Joanne are network coaches for their individual companies. And they're the ones that manage and coach those individual employers through the program. So it's a lot of touch, it's a lot of communication, helping them implement the tools. Also, we have tremendous support from the Navy. So when you look at the sponsors for each of the flags, it's the who's who in the Navy model. So Matt Sermon, the executive director, and now the direct reporting program manager for the MIB, owns Philly. Admiral Doug Adams, who is the UWS PEO, has Pittsburgh. Justin Meyer, who's the executive director for carriers, is Hampton Roads. Megan Atkins runs the AUKUS program. She does Boston. Stephanie Link is the Ohio in-service submarine executive director. Admiral Todd Weeks has Southern California. Casey Moten, who is the PEO for carriers. And Mike McClatchy is the Enterprise Plus. Mike is the executive director of UWS. So every year we do 3 big events. September we do a kickoff meeting. That's when all the employers come together and declare what they're going to do for the year. At the mid-year, January, February, we come back together to share and learn, get an update on where we are. and then we do a signing day, and you saw a picture of what the signing day looks like there. So also once a year, we bring all the network coaches in from around the country for 4 days in Hampton, Virginia, to train them on the program. So the network coaches are so critical to us that we train them, coach them, we bring them together, and then we produce the plan for the next year to the Navy so that they approve where we're going next. And then we're going to have our National Signing Day, again at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. on the 27th of June. So our ConOps is this. The TPP is the connective tissue. We're the ones that sit between the employers and all those pipelines to help you navigate that maze. So we also, our core competency here is, this is hardcore program management. So the TPP program management structure is managing 451 experiences simultaneously while we execute those and then plan for the future. So when you ask what the program is, from an individual employer, we train you, we coach you, we encourage you, and then recognize you for what you do. And we give you visibility to the Navy senior leadership to say that this investment is worthwhile in making a difference. So at the end of the day, our core outcome metric. So the core outcome metric program is you. At the end of the day, we do a yearbook. And in that yearbook, every employer has what did this program help you do? And it helps you run a better business. That's our core metric. It's every one of those 451 companies is different. All of them have a different operational circumstance. And if we can help them solve that problem to do 3 things, we believe that if you have a more effective talent acquisition retention system, you'll run a better business. And when you run a better business, you'll provide more capacity to the Navy. And then the MIB has a lot of other programs that are around how to help you with contracting, how to help do strategic sourcing, how to do technology insertions. But that's our role, is that big swing, is that core competency for every business. So basically, we help leaders who want to lead. That one is a really big word. Because if you don't want to get better, if you don't take the help, we could train you for the rest of your life and make no difference. At the end of the day, this is about leadership. Every company that's been successful is when the senior leader says, we have got to take this problem and give it the same level of attention that we do any other business problem. So how I talk about that is, if you are in manufacturing, and all of you are, if one day half of your product was being returned to you for a quality issue, imagine that. You sent the truck out with 50 things on it and 25 of them came back. Who would be involved in that conversation?
Everybody.
President of the company. We'd bring the best minds together. We'd gather some data. We would go talk to the customer. We would do deep analysis. And we would come up with a countermeasure. We would implement it. I was with a company not long ago. Last year, they hired 330 people, about a 600-person company. They hired 330 and lost 400. Who's involved in that conversation?
HR.
Fire the HR person.
The ex-HR.
Right? It's not merely my problem, because I'm running a business. You know, people are just lucky to have a job. So I don't really care about all that. Don't tell me your problem, just go find the right people. Where the companies that get this understand that this is as complex a problem as any other problem you're going to deal with. And like Dave, we talked about at the break, when you start talking about your suppliers, it gets even harder, because generally they don't have the resources that you have. And they continue to be the biggest reason I can't get this or that. So Matt would say we're a program of yes. If you want help and are willing to do something different, we'll help you. Pretty simple. So as we wrap up, next up, if you're part of the Defense Industrial Base, I don't think you'd be here if you weren't part of the Defense Industrial Base. So does this make sense to you? What do you think? Any
Yes.
Absolutely.
hard to figure out? It's usually this is kind of a fun conversation, and whenever I go into a company, usually you lay this out for about 5 minutes, they either get it or they don't. So I always know when they don't get it, when they say, "Hey Joe, this is really good. You just don't understand, we're different." That's when I pack my bag up and say, "Okay, you guys are gonna have that pity party, you just go have that pity party. I'm gonna go over here and we're gonna find something else out." So if it makes sense, doesn't necessarily mean it's a good idea. I think it's a good or a bad idea.
I think it's a good idea.
So if you want a partner, that would be the next step. The partner is, now we need to have an individual conversation with your company. Find out exactly where you are, what your challenges are, and then we start you down the process. So we're happy to do that. So it just kind of close. Casey Moden came on, and he said, "Joe, I gotta get a carrier program in here." So he showed this at the Enterprise Plus kickoff meeting, and so there's a point here, and we show you this. It's pretty cool, and then we'll see if you got the point of the meeting of this session. You can't get excited about that. You need to go to the doctor, man. That's pretty powerful. So we're on a mission. So the purpose here is to facilitate kind of a discussion is why Wisconsin? Why would Wisconsin be the place that we should do the next regional flag? What do you think?
Great weather.
Great weather? Nice. Nice. So I have a story. I was over at Fincan Terry, and I was out on the tour on Fincan Terry, and I was like, where are all the boats? I'm looking around for the boats, and they're nowhere. Guys said, we got to go inside to find the boats. So otherwise, you only make ships 6 months a year, you know. So controlled environment boat building up there in Marion. What do you think is their demand?
Because we're building ships and we all have retention problems. We're all trying to hire.
Is there enough employers up there to justify the Navy of actually doing a regional flag up here? What do you think?
I think there are. I think some of them aren't as visible as we think because they're, multiple tiers down. And oftentimes when we visit, we work with, over 1,000 visits, not all manufacturing, it's everything from restaurants to manufacturing to construction, okay? Sometimes employers don't know they're part of the defense supply chain, which I find
Fascinating.
or frustrating, whatever. It's they don't realize until we start talking that, well, you are, and therefore. So I think there is a need.
So we've seen that a lot. Probably, I would suspect 30, 40%. One of their suppliers said that's the guy. And still, 10-person Ryan Howe, the kid in one of the video, 9-person machine shop. They didn't realize that they just made these parts and they sent them up the road to somebody till they got identified. Now they're able to use that as a part of their recruiting strategy.
Well, and they're realizing more that they are part of the supply chain because there are more requirements being flowed down. So some of them, are. It's starting to click a little bit that, oh geez, yes, we are.
Are there other organizations in Wisconsin that may not be represented here? Because we often find that there are local manufacturing associations and local who have access to a lot of these folks that we don't see from a national level.
We work with the Manufacturing Extension Partnership here in Wisconsin quite heavily. As a matter of fact, I was just texting him before I came here.
Okay.
So I don't know. I think you guys have worked with the WMEP and their organizations, but we have a strong MEP presence here in Wisconsin.
We have even a local manufacturing alliance that's growing exponentially every year, and we've got other local foundations. But we see it across the state. There's more and more growing.
Really?
Yep.
Good.
Absolutely.
So somehow being able to break into that, alliances kind of thing. What about at the state level, like workforce development boards and things that the states are doing? California has a lot of state activity around this particular topic.
Wisconsin has one of the best youth apprentice programs in the
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's really rock solid, and they're growing. They've added more and more youth apprenticeships, but there's a solid foundation in Wisconsin for youth apprenticeship and registered apprenticeship.
So certainly there's some interest at the state level to be involved in one of these kind of programs.
They come on the workforce investment committee.
The WIB?
For February leaders. So
Okay.
then everybody from the statewide, there's from colleges to work for various employers and technologists to what we have to do for workforce retention.
Right.
Topic for us, as well as technology and such. So.
Well, those are the kind of organizations that need to be aware of the program. So we can, help. We're happy to have a conversation with them. And certainly it's kind of a lot of the states like Philly, there's they're already investing dollars, we're investing dollars. It's kind of integrating some of that.
Big thing that we found is, I'll give you the mission that you need a lot of support from where we're working with the tech college, but also wraparound services. A lot of the talent that we hire today, they got many issues related to housing, transportation, various issues like that, and working with the community. And those wraparound services really focuses around retention of those employees, and then that engagement. We were losing a whole bunch of people just through the training process, and it was really related to those items, as well as getting that connection with the company. So that's something that we really focused on.
That's one of our pipelines. There is what we call the recovered. So what we discovered was specifically, in some areas, some of the factors are length of the commute, reliable transportation. We found a lot of people were getting a job, and then very shortly after. So we were with one company, and they had a new president. So he asked the leadership team, so what did they say when you called them? And what did the lead team say? Well, why would we call them? they just probably abandoned the job. They were bad, shouldn't have ever hired him anyway. So Kevin said, oh yeah, we're gonna call him. So, of course, everybody looked at the HR person. What did Kevin say? The leader that worked for them is gonna make the call. And then he went on. He said, so when you make the call, what's the question you're gonna ask them?
Are you okay?
And then some amazing things happen. I didn't have enough bus money to get to work. Well, we can fix that. Or you told me I had to buy a $50 pair of work boots to come to work. I can't afford that. Or I couldn't fix my child care. So you had to be at work at 7 o'clock. My child care center doesn't open until 7. So once they started to say, well, we can help you with that, and then they ask them, well, if we helped you with that, would you come back to work? What'd they generally say? So they took advantage of something that could have been really bad. All of a sudden they made it really good that the company actually cared about them. So it actually drew their retention up by doing some really simple things, like buying them the boots for them, or giving them a stipend up front, or giving them, adjusting the hours for people who were doing 2 hours, to get them to work on the bus. There's just so many things that we call it stop doing stupid stuff. And the employers would say, well, that's how we've always done it, so why would we do it any differently? So those wraparound services, there's tremendous out there, but most people just don't know how to get access to them and how to support that. So that's a challenge. I was saying earlier in Philly, first place, so I would have never wanted to be in the education business during COVID. I mean, you could think I'd do 1,000 things. I didn't want to do that. One of their cost savings initiatives in Philly was they canceled the driver's ed program. Well, then people were getting out and they couldn't get a driver's license. So I got to tell you the story. So we had one of the employees, her name was Ajane. She was a welder from the Philly school district. And so she got hired, and that was pretty cool. So about 4 months after that, I was down at Rhodes Industries where she's at. And I walked down there and I found the welding instructor. Because even if they go to the welding training program, they still got to go through a ton of training to get certified, do the weld. So they hired a retired welder to come back to be the instructor. So he was the first guy I met. And generally you get these old crudgy welders. I thought he was going to tell me how terrible these kids were and all the rest of that. He said, Joe, these are the coolest kids. And they come every day. And I'm like, you're kidding me. There were 5 of them that they hired. And they'd been at work like 4 months. In 4 months, 5 people had 3 lates. Was that amazing? 3 lates. So I'm talking to them about this. And so 4 of the kids were from inner city Philly, and they had to take public transportation. I mean, it's amazing. They had like 3 bus changes, then had to walk like a mile to get to the bus, but they were there every day. And Ajane was the most senior one. And she was very proud to say that on Saturday I pick up my new car. So she didn't take the bus transportation, and then the other 3 kids said, yeah, she's coming to pick us up. Come to school. So the 5th kid was a suburbs kid. And he said, well, I don't have that problem. I said, well, why? He said, my mom brings me to work and picks me up. And I was late one time. And he said, I counseled my mother for a week. Because she didn't want to get up that morning and bring me to work. And so every morning I'm in there saying, come on, Mom, we got to go to work. And it just brings tears to your eyes. That most of the kids would just say, screw it, I'm not going to do it. But now they were so excited that Ajane was there. She's still there 4 years later. They've really ramped up the program down there. So my coolest part of this program is, and I tell my network coaches this every day, is if you get up in the morning and look for something bad, you'll find it. If you get up in the morning and look for something good, you'll find that too. I prefer looking for the good. So there's a ton of stories out there, the good stuff that goes on. And it's a whole lot easier to do more good than it is to work on the bad side of the equation. So, and we have that with companies. You have companies get all jazzed up, and then all of a sudden, they just go completely dark. And you find out that generally there's some kind of internal, HR wants to be involved, the ops guys say we ain't touching that. Everybody's jazzed up, and then, so we just have to be very careful not to try to convince people to do something they don't really want to do to start with. So that's what makes it fun. You find that, we talked about that today.
I mean,
That's very attractive to us when you have the Oshkoshes, the DRSs, not only for their sites, but their supplier chain.
right.
So bring them, they know that. Guys like you, Dave, we talked about that earlier. I mean, we always tend to go to the HR side, but really the magic is on the supply chain side. It's really supplier development on steroids, and it's not on your nickel. So why would you not encourage your companies to take advantage of the program? That's what we're trying to do with Newport News, and make it a much more powerful. So when you look at all those kind of what I call accelerators, this is a pretty target-rich environment here. So when we start this experience with an employer, one of the first things we sit down with them is ask them, why would somebody come work here? I was telling a story earlier today. I did it with a lead team. After about an hour, I was going to have to slip my wrist. It was just, everything was so terrible. We can't get it done. I walked out to the parking lot, and the president followed me out and said, Joe, I really apologize. I didn't think it was going to go like this. I said, hey, man, no problem, And he said, you know what I learned? I wouldn't come work for this company. We hire these people, we make them, we don't pay them anything, not a living wage. We make them work overtime. We don't train them. No wonder they leave. Because all those guys in the room, you're just lucky to have a job. And when you treat people like that today, they're not going to put up with that. They're just going to walk down. They're going to find a company that values them. So you want to be a part of this. It starts with you, right? You got to understand, why would somebody come to work here? And then start to market that. Because you're right, they're much more talented. And they see, and they want to prove it. So how they're treated in the hiring process. Do you treat me with respect? Do I get the right stuff? That's a huge mind shift for a lot of companies, especially the smaller ones that just have never, it's not their core competency. Well, I think it's Colin's good to great. What's Colin say? Every great company. Get the right people on the bus, get them in the right seat, and get the people that don't want to be there off the bus. The companies who do that the best are the ones that are winning all the time. Taylor is the flag lead for Finkenterry and been involved in the program for 4 years now. So the lead briefer this morning to kick off the mid-year, VP of Ops. He stood up and said, this program is a must-do for our business. Most of the time it's the VP of the second speaker was the VP of HR. That said, my job is to help us come together as a team. But when you look at the data is like, I don't know what right looks like, but that can't be it. And there's no point solution. I think that's what we've learned. There's no point solution that if you just, raise base salaries by $5, that's going to solve the problem or whatever. This is much more complicated than that. Monthly on admin, it's how many did you hire and how many left. And I tell you, some companies, no freaking clue. Smaller companies, you get a 200-person company and say, the answer would be, that'd take one person 3 days to figure that out. Because I got to go to my HR people, I got to go to the payroll people. They had no idea what their retention rates were, and they didn't have the systems to produce it. Well, that's the first problem. But then you go to their manufacturing side, they got all this data. So one is you got to be able to measure it, and that's a monthly report. So usually it's a POC. How many people in your company?
20.
So and that's perfect. Usually we're talking directly to you, and then usually there's a POC maybe Sometimes it's a clerk or something that provides the data and does the coordination. Like coming to the events. We want the events to be a value add. I get to go learn something at the events. I mean, we spend a lot of time on making the events right, that they're valuable. People want to come and learn a little bit. It shouldn't be, well, shit, I got to go to another TPP event. Also, the tool development is, as I'll attest to, is we bring the go by. So the developmental time is not white sheet of paper on a world-class first day. So here's an example. Let's make it your own. We're doing number one tools leader new hire retention training. I mean, first-time supervisors aren't getting it. We do it for 10-person companies or 300-person company or 1,000-person company. You ask them, that all went away during COVID, if they ever had it. A lot of times they have no training for them at all. And I would contend it's probably the most effective when we start to hold them accountable for keeping their people. What happens now is in April of 2026, we're going to hold a demand signal roundtable. And one of the senior Navy leaders will chair that. At that point, employers will come and go in front of the Navy and say, we want it here. So between now and then, we need to start generating those interested people that said, I want to be there. So if you want to be a part of the program now, you become part of the plus flag, like Strowig. So you can take advantage of those services. We get enough people that starts to get a density. Then we do the demand signal roundtable, and with one or two places, or maybe three, then the Navy will select where they want to put the flag. So anyway, thanks for coming on. A couple things here. One is to my friends at Fairbanks Morse Defense. Thanks for hosting us here today. Thanks for all you coming. Thanks Source 10 for being our videographers here today. We're taking this opportunity, we're putting together a recruiting video that we're going to provide to everybody to say, hey, here's kind of what it is, 3 to 5 minute thing. And then try to generate that too. So thanks for being here, Sandy. Appreciate you. And cards and letters. So you have my email. You're going to get, if you're on the registration list, you'll get a copy of the deck. Vince and I will be in contact with you. Let us know what you want to do. We'll start to build this connective tissue. So thank you so much for being here. Powerful day. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.